was late last spring. Me and my friend Drew were driving back from a weekend hiking trip in Colorado. It was close to midnight, maybe later. The highway was dead quiet, just 2 lanes of cracked asphalt cutting through miles of pine forest. We were both running on caffeine and bad gas station sandwiches when we saw a sign that said, "Rest stop 1 mile ahead." We figured we'd pull in, stretch our legs, and switch drivers for the last few hours. As we rolled into the lot, I noticed there were no other cars except one. This old beat-up sedan parked crooked under a broken light. Its paint was the color of rust and ash, and the trunk was half open, just enough to make it look wrong. A soft tune floated through the air, an old song, something that sounded like 1950s jazz. At first, I thought someone left their radio on, but the music was coming from inside that car. We parked 2 spaces away. Drew turned off the engine, and for a second, it felt like we'd driven into a bubble of silence. The forest around us was completely still. No wind, no crickets, nothing. "Probably someone sleeping in there," Drew said, unbuckling. "Let's just be quick." We walked toward the restroom building. The vending machines were half lit, one of them humming like it was about to die. Everything smelled like wet asphalt and pine needles. On our way back, Drew stopped walking. He pointed toward the old car. "Dude, look." The music had stopped. The trunk that had been slightly open. Now it was closed, and there was a pair of muddy boot prints leading away from it, straight toward the trees. I laughed it off at first, trying to sound braver than I felt. Maybe he went for a smoke or something. But then, the car radio clicked back on. The same song started again, but it was skipping, repeating the same warped saxophone note over and over. That's when we heard it. Footsteps, coming from the trees behind the restrooms, slow, crunching against gravel and pine needles. "Let's just go," I whispered. Drew nodded, and we started walking faster toward our car. We were maybe 10 feet from the driver's door when a voice came from behind us. Low, rough. "Hey, can you give me a lift back to where you found me?" We both froze. There was a man standing just past the beam of the overhead light, close enough to see his outline, but not his face. He was tall and thin, clothes soaked through like he'd walked out of a river. His hair hung in dripping strands. Drew tried to sound calm. "Sorry, man, we're headed the other way." The man didn't move. He just tilted his head and repeated the same line, word for word. "Can you give me a lift back to where you found me?" His voice didn't sound right. It was too steady. No breath between words, like a recording. Drew unlocked the car, and I climbed in fast, slamming the door. The guy took a step closer. I yelled, "We're leaving," and hit the locks. Drew started the engine, tires crunching as he reversed out of the space. When we looked back, the man was standing dead center in the lot, watching us drive off. The radio in his car was still playing that same broken note. It took maybe 30 seconds to get back on the highway. Neither of us spoke. We were both too shaken. I glanced in the side mirror and nearly screamed. That old sedan's headlights had turned on. It was following us. "Step on it," I shouted. Drew floored it, the speedometer climbing past 90. But the car stayed right behind us, same distance, no matter how fast we went. Its lights didn't bounce like normal headlights. They glowed steady and white, almost too bright. After maybe 5 minutes, the road started to twist through a wooded curve, and the lights suddenly blinked out. And gone. We drove another half hour before pulling into a truck stop. Both of us were shaking. Drew got out to check the back of the car, just in case. But there was nothing. No one behind us. We tried to laugh it off again, saying maybe it was some lunatic trying to scare travelers. But the part that still doesn't sit right with me happened later, after I got home. I was unpacking my bag the next morning when I noticed something on my jeans. Dried mud. Not from hiking. It was darker, almost black, and smelled faintly like metal. I thought maybe it got on me when we stopped. But when I checked my shoes, the mud wasn't on the soles. It was smeared across the ankles, like something or someone had grabbed me. 2 nights later, I got a text from Drew. It said, "Did you open my trunk last night?" I told him no, and he sent a picture. It was his car, parked in his driveway. The trunk was slightly open, and inside you could see the corner of something old and metal. Looked like a rusted license plate. He said he hadn't touched it. The next morning, he sent another message. "Don't come by for a while." When I asked why, he sent me one last photo. It was taken through his living room window. Parked across the street was a beat-up sedan, rust-colored, and the trunk was slightly open. I never heard from Drew after that week. His parents said he moved out of state for work, but none of his social media's been active since. It happened about a year ago on a Sunday night. I just finished a 12-hour shift at the county hospital and decided to take the back highway home instead of the main road. It was quieter that way. No traffic, no stoplights, just miles of empty blacktop cutting through farmland. It was a little past midnight, fog curling low to the ground, and my headlights barely cut through it. I remember rolling down my window a bit to get some air. That's when I first saw the flicker. At first, I thought it was just the reflection of my lights hitting a road sign. But it was lower, under the guardrail. Something metallic kept catching the light like it was wet. I slowed down instinctively, thinking maybe someone had hit a deer. But when I passed the spot, I heard it, faint but clear. A woman's voice, crying. It wasn't a scream, not even a call. Just this quiet, broken sobbing, like someone who'd been crying for hours. I pulled over on instinct. I work in the ER. Helping people in trouble is just what I do. I grabbed my flashlight and got out, keeping my phone in my hand in case I needed to call 911. The moment I stepped out, the night went completely still. No crickets, no wind. Just that low fog drifting across the asphalt. I walked toward the guardrail, shining my light along the edge. There was mud smeared across the metal, like someone had grabbed it. Dark streaks with finger mark patterns. And then, I heard her again. "Please, help me." It was coming from under the road. I crouched down and aimed my flashlight into the ditch. The beam hit the muddy slope below, and for a split second, I thought I saw something. The shape of a woman's arms sticking up through the water, pale and still. I blinked, moved the light back, and it was gone. Just dirty water reflecting my beam. My heart was pounding. I called 911 and told them what I'd seen, where I was, and that I thought someone might be trapped down there. They told me to stay put until an officer arrived. So I stood there, waiting, freezing, staring down at that ditch. And the whole time, I could hear her crying softly, like she was right beneath me. By the time the sheriff pulled up 15 minutes later, the sound had stopped. They searched the ditch, the woods, even checked the creek that ran parallel to the road. Nothing. No car tracks, no sign of an accident, no footprints, just mud and fog. When I tried to explain what I'd heard, the deputy gave me this strange look, like he'd heard it before. He said quietly, "You're not the first one to call about this spot." He took my statement, told me to head home, and that was that. But the next morning, I couldn't shake it. I kept replaying that voice in my head, the pain in it, the way it seemed to echo under the road. So after my next shift, I asked one of the older nurses if she'd ever heard of anything happening out there. She frowned right away. "You mean that stretch past mile marker 6? She said. "Yeah," she sighed. "That's where that car went over 3 years ago." Young woman, newly married, I think, drove off during a storm. They didn't find her until 2 days later when the water went down. I felt cold all over. "Was she under the guardrail?" "Exactly there," she said. "Locals call it the crying bend now. Every so often, someone says they hear her at night." I tried to tell myself it was just my imagination. Exhaustion, fog, bad lighting. But the thing is, I went back. A week later, after another late shift, I drove the same road. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to know I hadn't lost my mind. When I reached that same guardrail, my chest tightened. I slowed down, rolled the window halfway. The night air was freezing. Nothing. Just wind and the hum of my tires. I almost laughed at myself, until my radio flickered. The station cut to static, then silence. And through that silence, from somewhere outside, came the sound I'd hoped I'd never hear again. A woman's voice. "Please, help me." I didn't stop this time. But as I drove, I looked in my rearview mirror. For a second, I thought I saw movement by the rail, like someone trying to climb out of the ditch. Then my headlights caught the mile marker sign, 6, and the voice stopped. The next day, I told a state trooper I knew from the hospital about it. He got real quiet and said, "We get calls from that area every few months. Always a woman's voice. Always around midnight." I asked if they'd ever found anything. He shook his head. "Nothing living," he said. "That was the last time I took that road."